I would like to begin the press conference, please. My name is Ian Thomas Ash, and I'm a documentary filmmaker and a member of this club, and it is my honor to be the MC at today's press conference. I will keep my remarks very brief so that we have as much time as possible for our speaker. Dr. Claussen is here in Japan this time. Her work this trip is concentrating on the condition of cleanup workers, and we'll let her speak more about that in a moment. She's going to speak for about 15 to 20 minutes in English. For those people that need to have some Japanese help, there will be a PowerPoint presentation that will be mainly in Japanese. And at the end of her speech, we'll have time for question and answers.
So the PowerPoint is only in English, but you have this handout with Japanese translations. Thank you very much for the invitation to come here to Japan and to be able to speak to you. I want to speak a lot about Chernobyl, 30 years, and Fukushima, 5 years. So mainly in my talk I will concentrate about the dogma on low-level radiation and the Chernobyl health effects, because we have studied Chernobyl a long time, 30 years. And I will talk about the dogma that is supported by the Japanese and also by the international authorities, namely UNSCARE, WHO, ICRP, and IAEA. This dogma is only thyroid cancer in children is found because of Chernobyl. And there's no problem under 100 millisievert for your health. Just smile. But after Chernobyl catastrophe, studies show there is a rise of cancer, not only thyroid, but leukemia, breast cancer, and other cancers. And there is a rise of non-cancer diseases. And these non-cancer diseases exceed the cancer cases. Non-cancer diseases, for instance, on the blood system, stroke, heart attack, thyroid, endocrinological diseases, for instance, Basedow, Hashimoto, and diabetes and Lenz diseases. And third, we have genetic effects, for instance, congenital malformations, and rise in perinatal mortality and rise in stillbirth. So my message for Japan is clear. We need systematic health checkup for all cleanup workers, not only the TEPCO ones, but all evacuees, all adults and children, and the population remaining in most contaminated zones. Because as epidemiologists, you can only find something if you look for it. So don't close your eyes. At first, I want to present you a small study done by Yamashita and Shibata. And it compares the number of cancer cases and non-cancer cases in the thyroid organ. Yamashita and Shibata found 62 cases of thyroid cancer, but 45,873 cases of non-cancer thyroid cases. In a cohort, they studied of almost 120,000 children from Ukraine, from Belarus, and Russia. At first, I want to go now with you through the cancer cases. Of course, we have cancer cases in cleanup workers, and there's a dose-related increase in solid cancer, an increase in acute and chronic lymphatic leukemia. We find increasing cancer cases in Belarus. There it was found almost 60% rise in the province of Gomel, which was much radiated, and for Belarus overall, 40%. We also found the increase of breast cancer in the contaminated areas of Gomel and Mogilov in Belarus, and Chernigov, Kiev, and Zhytomyr in Ukraine, and an increase in leukemia in children in the contaminated areas of the Ukraine. There's a significant rise if the contamination is higher than 10 millisievert. A study done by Noshevsko. And in Belarus, the scientific discussion was very pro and con. But recently, Alfred Körblein from Germany, he got the data from Belarus, and in his accountants, he found out that there was indeed an increase in leukemia in Belarus too, but in the group of babies between 0 and 1 years old, right after the accident in the first year. And then we have an increase in number of brain tumors for children under 6 years. This is a study done by Orlov and Chadevsky from Ukraine. Then the Chernobyl non-cancer diseases I go through now. We have the risk of cardiovascular diseases increased in non-radiated children. Priazhnuk in his study found out that 57.8% of the radiated children develop such a cardiovascular disease versus 31% of the non-radiated. Other non-cancer cases. Chernobyl blood cells. Chernobyl shows adverse effect in children's blood cells. Yevgenia Stepanova did a study on 1,251 children. She studied them from 1993 to 1998 in the region of Narodichevsky, which was very much contaminated in Ukraine, and the data shows statistically significant reduction in red blood cells and white blood cells, in the platelet counts and in hemoglobin, and this with increasing residential cesium salt contamination. There are many other studies done by her on other organs, but I want now to go to the brain effects. Again, a study group of scientists from Ukraine, from the Kiev University, shows that radiation severely affects the human brain. And before these studies, it was thought there was almost no effects. The pediatrician Nyago and Loganovsky showed that there is a dose-related cognitive and neurophysiological abnormalities be found in prenatally exposed children after the Chernobyl accident. And this is done by the radioactive iodine. It's dependent during the gestation age on the amount of thyroid that was accumulated by the embryo. In the gestation age of 8 weeks, we find in the fetus more than 20 millisievert or 300 millisievert thyroid dose, which can be very quickly accumulated by a fetus with a very, very small thyroid. And at the gestation ages of 16 to 25 weeks, abnormalities also at doses more than 10 millisievert and 200 millisievert for thyroid dose, respectively. Now I come to the brain effects in adults in liquidator cells. Of course, the liquidators, if you remember the pictures from Chernobyl, where the liquidators were working on the roof of the reactor, they obtained much more radiation. And Lovanovsky again and his study group found radiation-associated cerebrovascular effects. That means people, the liquidators, get strokes. And this was obtained at doses more than 150 millisievert to 250 millisievert. And then this study group also showed direct nerve cell effects on the brain. And they showed that the rate of neuropsychiatric disorders among persons working since 1968 to 1087 and were irradiated above 205 millisievert, they found neuropsychiatric disorders in 80.5%. And when the rate of the same continuity was lower, again irradiated but below 257 millisievert, the rate of these disorders was 20% about. But still a much amount of very severe brain diseases. When you see these liquidators, and you meet them as a doctor, you will see that they have very hard cognitive effects, like their concentration is very bad. They forget everything very quickly, just like a person that's old. Also, Loganovsky calls it accelerated aging process. The liquidators' health, if we look at that, the main cause why liquidators died was stroke and heart attack. And the second death cause was cancer. Yablokov, a Russian biologist, looked at studies on liquidators from the health registries in Obninsk, in Russia, and in Kiev, and he estimates that out of the 830,000 liquidators, about 112,000 to 125,000 liquidators have died so far. And other non-cancer diseases are on reproductive health. We find an increase in stillbirths in southern Bavaria. Southern Bavaria in Germany was not contaminated so much, but again, much more than North Bavaria. And we find an increase in stillbirths in Eastern European countries like Greece, Hungary, Poland, and Sweden, and also in Middle European countries, but the effect is not so clear in Central Europe. Countries like Austria, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Norway, and Switzerland. And then we find an increase in the perinatal mortality in Germany and Poland, corresponding to cesium contamination, and also an increase in congenital malformations in Belarus, in Ukraine, and Bavaria, again corresponding to the cesium soil contamination. And then we come to the genetic effects. In Berlin, Down syndrome rose up. This is a study done by Sperling. Then the chromosomal aberrations in children of liquidators. The children were not directly irradiated, but their fathers. We found chromosomal aberrations. And then new studies show from Hagen-Scherp that changes in the birth ratio of male and female newborn changed. Less female babies were born. So this is really hard stuff, very, very many different health effects, cancer, non-cancer, and genetic effects. And we do not only know this from the Chernobyl studies, but recently, the last 10, 15 years, there were done many, many new large epidemiological case control studies on radiation health effects. And these case control studies show very similar results. So it is proven in these studies that even doses lower than 10 millisievert increase the risk of developing cancer, do damage to brain vessels or heart vessels, and do change genetic makeup. So the Japanese scientist and Dr. Yamashita is wrong with his estimations that low dose is not harmful. Indeed, low dose radiation is harmful. Now, to convince you again, I want to show some of these big epidemiological studies. At first, I go to the background radiation. Often politics say, oh, background radiation is very natural, it doesn't do anything. But even background radiation causes adverse health effects. Cancer risk is rising. And here are the studies, some studies on background radiation. one study from 13 European countries, case control studies, show that a 60% elevated risk per 100 becquerel per cubic meter. Smoking is an independent risk factor, and there's no threshold. So radon causes 9% of the lung cancer and 2% mortality lung cancer. And of course, we have more background radiation studies, one from Great Britain on child leukemia, and they found a 12% elevated risk per millisievert for bone marrow doses. We can summarize that 15 to 20% of all cases of child leukemia derive from background radiation. So it does something. And also medical diagnostics do something. Medical diagnostics cause adverse health effects proven in epidemiological studies. So therefore we as doctors have to be very careful, use only medical diagnostic when it's really necessary. Of course, then we have to use it and we must use it because it helps to save a lot of lives. Here's a study which looked at 355 patients in the years 1985 to 2002. And the result is that one CT, sometimes CT can have a relatively high radiation. A CT with 50 to 60 millisievert may increase the risk threefold of developing leukemia or brain tumors. And there was no confounder. And nuclear medicine. An Australian study looked at 10.9 million patients. And they found that one CT increases the cancer risk by 24%. And each CT that follows increases the risk by 16%. And the younger a patient is, the higher is the risk. And another low-level radiation source may be uranium mining. In East Germany, we had a very huge region with uranium mining, and from this region, a study was done with almost 60,000 workers. And it was found a causal relationship between the whole working time and the cancer risk. 21 increased cancer risk per work level month. And another cohort studies from 11 cohort studies, an overview was 65,000 men and 2,007 deaths due to cancer. And again, a linear causal connection is found between radon exposure and lung cancer. And of course, long-term exposure shows greater effects than short-term. Lung cancer from radon causes 40% of the lung cancer in mine workers and 10% in the general public. And these slides are just to show you where uranium mining is done. And we also have studies from there, like Namibia, Canada, India, Australia, and USA. And now I come to the nuclear workers. A study was done in 15 countries with almost 600,000, looking at 600,000 workers in 154 factories. And there, solid tumors were found to be at an 97% elevated risk per sievert, and leukemia 193% elevated risk per sievert. So the result is that 1 to 2% of overall mortality among nuclear workers is caused by radiation. There are also studies, new studies now on nuclear workers and the risk of heart attack. And this is a very new study from the famous cancer scientist Mark Little. He looked at different studies, non-cancer effects of radiation make an increased risk of strokes, of heart disease, of digestive disease, or cataracts, this is lens disease, and damage to the nervous system. So he agreed that what we find in Chernobyl and in the Chernobyl liquidators is also found in all these other studies on nuclear workers. Now I'm ending my presentation. I thank you for your attention, and you may ask questions to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Claussen. I'd like to first open the floor to working press members for questions. If you have a question, please come up to the mic, state your affiliation, and please keep your questions brief. Please.
Anthony Rowley, Singapore Business Times. Sorry I came in a little late, so I may have missed some of your early remarks, but how great are these dangers in the Fukushima region and in Japan relative to what they are in the European or the East European regions? I mean, I just didn't hear you talk about that. And you say that, you know, that for all nuclear workers there are dangers. But where there's been a nuclear disaster, such as in Chernobyl or in Fukushima, is the danger very much greater in those areas?
So coming to the first question, how great is the danger in Fukushima? We have to find it out how great it is. To be able to find out how great this danger is, it is necessary to make good epidemiological studies. A good epidemiological study needs as a base good data. So the first thing that the Japanese government is responsible for to make up a good database. A good database would include in Fukushima regularly health checkups for all the clean workers. All the cleanup workers means not only the ones that work at the reactor, but also the cleanup workers that work at the decontamination zones. And as when I talked to some journalists and people here in Fukushima, I heard that usually in the contamination areas, the badge for measuring radiation is not used. At least it is not controlled. So no data about how much radiation these decontamination workers get. Only how much radiation they get in the works around the nuclear reactor of Fukushima. So we need good data, how much dose they receive, all the workers, and then all the workers have to go to a health checkup. After the accident of Chernobyl, different registries were found, and study groups were made in Moscow, the Kurchatov Institute, in Obninsk, in Minsk, in Gomel, and in Kiev. Here in Japan, we have only the Fukushima University, and the Fukushima University only does studies on thyroid cancer. And this is very, very narrow. But we have to widen up our view. And we need data from the cleanup workers, from all the evacuees, from all the children that were evacuated, and from all the people that still live in contaminated zones. So the Japanese government is responsible to make up this data. And up to now they did not do it. And I think it is a shame. It's a real shame. This country, Japan, is a wonderful country with wonderful, great scientists, good medical doctors. They have the potential to do all this. They really have the potential, and they can do it. And they have enough devices to check up, to make checkups, and they do not do it. And this is just a shame. So to be able to find out about the risk We need all these good databases, and then in the health checkups we find something, or we do not find anything. But this is a way to make an approach.
Any more questions?
Hello, Mary Corbett from Medical Globe. I was wondering if you've had the opportunity to look at data from Okayama University, because we had doctors there have been studying. They're actually even narrow, I think, focused on thyroid and children. However, they've seen a tremendous spike in some areas, which the government attributes to wider screening. Okay, so that brings me to a second question. I highly recommend, I think we've got introductions if you're interested. But quick question, if the diagnostic tools available are quite invasive and quite high risk, then, for example, for thyroid cancer anyway, dogs, canine detectors have proven to be extremely effective, 95-96% hit rates. Do you think that is a viable alternative? I know in the United States they're starting it in many areas, not just for thyroid, but because I know that screening itself is high risk for some of the children especially.
I visited Professor Tsuda in Okayama University. This was also one of the reasons that I came here, because I wanted to really be able to discuss with him. And the screening in Fukushima, the Fukushima province, is done in an area where there is a nuclear accident. It's not done in an area where there is no nuclear accident. So we know that there was this accident. We know that radioactive iodine came out of the reactor. And third, we know that usually no thyroid, no kalium-iodide tablets were taken in. So we know in this area there's a clear risk. And I think it is right in this risky area to make a screening. This has to be done. So I think it's good that it has been done. And the way the doctor does there is first ultrasound, and only if they find something in ultrasound, then they do fine needle biopsy. And of course, when you make fine needle biopsy in the child, you have to do an anesthesia for the child. In Chernobyl, the ultrasound devices were not there in the beginning, and the people came only, the mothers, to the doctors there when the thyroid became thick, or the lymph nodules, or so, when they had clinical signs of the disease. And we know that radioactive iodine makes thyroid cancer. So I think it's very responsible to do this screening there. But I wouldn't advise to do screening all over Japan.
Can you briefly remark about the use of the second part of the question about the use of dogs? A canine detection?
I don't know the use of dogs in what kind of detection.
They can smell cancer?
Yes, they can distinguish. I think in Europe and the United States now they have dogs.
I have never heard about that.
We'll
I cannot
have
comment
a press
on
conference
that.
about that in the future. Any more questions, please? If no one else has another question first, does anyone else have a question? If not, we'll have... Okay, please. Please.
I'm just trying to understand how widespread the risk is. I mean, you talk here of cases of prenatal mortality in Germany and Poland, congenital malformation in Belarus, Ukraine, so on and so forth, and Down syndrome in Berlin. All those are related to the Chernobyl incident.
Mhm.
The Chernobyl incident, of course, was far worse, I believe, than the Fukushima incident. So is the risk of a much more diffused impact in Japan there? In other words, in Korea, for instance, or in China? How widely is this low radiation level likely to spread? It's a very uninformed question, I'm afraid, but I don't know whether we're just talking about Japan or we're talking about neighboring countries too.
We are talking about Japan here. The radiation plume from Fukushima went 20% to Japan islands, but 80% into the ocean. And so this is a big difference to Chernobyl. And the Chernobyl reactor was burning 10 days, and the clouds came up very high, and then the clouds went thousands of kilometers, and then with the rain they fell down. But in the Fukushima accident, we have a different kind of an accident with a meltdown, a radioactive meltdown. And most of the radioactive went in the Pacific Ocean. And for this sort of accident, there's a must to do scientific studies on the aquatic life in the ocean, I think. Is that the right word in English? I'm German. So I am waiting for, and I hope that such studies will be made on the life in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. On one hand, near Fukushima, of course, but then the radioactive went far away in the ocean, and studies, they might be difficult to do, but they should be done. And to China and to Korea, the radioactive releases were very, very low. It mostly really, there is these mountains in Japan from north to south, so it was halted, sort of.
If we have no more questions from working, we do, please.
Martin Kölling with the German financial daily Handelsblatt. Could you tell us a little bit more about how long you will stay and what you will do in the rest of your stay here in Japan? And did you also talk to the government about your proposals, and what was the answer so far for increased studies?
Mm-hmm. I only had the time to come 1 week to Japan. And what I did was meet with doctors in Osaka and in Kyoto, and with different activist groups in Nagoya, and also again in Osaka, and here in Tokyo, and to talk to some journalists. I have not been able to talk to the government. I would have liked to talk to the government, and especially to TEPCO and the Ministry of Health. But it is a pity. On one hand, I don't have enough time. I'm a doctor working in Germany. I have my own praxis there, and couldn't get so much time off. And also our connections to the Japanese government and to the Ministry of Health between IPPNW, Germany, and between the government, they are not really established yet. There are good connections, as I know, between the Japanese section of IPPNW, but the Japanese section is not interested in Fukushima. That's too bad.
He's asking for elaboration, please.
I can. Well, we had our Congress, a World Congress in Hiroshima in 2012, and the Japanese section did not want to talk about Fukushima, and a lot of other sections from the world IPPNW did want to talk about Fukushima, and among each other we had a big struggle, and in the end we could talk about Fukushima too. Not only the Japanese section is talking and thinking a lot and doing scientific works about Hiroshima and Hiroshima health effects. And the doctors that work there are mostly professors from these universities of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and so on, which do their work there. And other reason, the Japanese do not tell often the real reasons, so I cannot say anymore.
If there are no more questions from working press, I'd like to open up the floor to the general guests. Please.
Hello, my name is Yasushiro Izumi from Sentaku Shuppan. I would like to ask you, when will you come back to Japan next time, and what you will do then?
I haven't decided yet when to come back to Japan. This is my third visit to Japan, and I visited Fukushima region twice and talked there with doctors from medical polyclinics that deal with patients from Fukushima, and went to the zone, the 20-kilometer zone, and to Koriyama, and to some villages, and with the help of a Japanese friend of mine, I could go together with a man who was evacuated to go and look at his house. Maybe I come back in a year or so, I don't know. But I definitely want to come back because we have good friends here, and I do a lot of networking. And we will have a congress on Fukushima and Chernobyl in the end of February, February 26 to 28 in Berlin. And there we have invited some Japanese people. Also Professor Tsuda will speak there. We are very happy that he can come, and some other people. And we talk there about Chernobyl and Fukushima, but also about somewhat about the alternative for nuclear energy, like renewable energy.
If I could ask a follow-up question based on your question. Looking back at your work in Chernobyl for the past 30 years, you shared with us today about your concern for nuclear workers. Where do you see, in your future trips coming back to Japan, where do you see your work focusing as the years go on?
We want to focus. This is a good idea to contact the Ministry of Health and the Japanese government and focus on our on what we want, that really all the contaminated people will get health checkups and can do something for their health, and that there is an independent way of controlling making these health checkups. I think there's also this. We have also this problem in Germany and in Europe that some of the specialists are not so much independent and are very much government speaking or IAO speaking. which is in a big UN organization that is interested in promoting nuclear energy. So one has to be careful, and we want to urge that really these health checkups are done, and that they are paid by the insurance or by the government or what body soever, which would be what would be appropriate, and that people that are sick can get early enough medical help. This is our main object.
Yes, my name is Joël Lejean from French Television and Radio, RTL, BFM TV. I think your project drove you to Japan already in the past, as you said. You came in 2012, I think, to make some lecture in Japan. And your project is driven under the framework of Mr. Sebastian Plugbeil, if I'm right.
Right.
Who has made some very critical statement about Mr. Bandazewski. You know?
Mr. who?
Bandazewski, you remember Mr. Bandazewski, who was
Bandazewski.
Yes,
Bandazewski.
He is very critical of what he said.
Yes, I
right?
know.
So I'd like to know. I mean, what's your funding? What's your research? And what is exactly your line? Because we discover since 5 years that there are so many scientists who come to Japan and who don't have the same agreements on the situation. For instance. Are there enough sampling for the thyroid? Are there enough kids who've been checked about the situation for their thyroid? Are we doing enough sampling? Scientists don't have same opinions. Some people say we can detect better today the disease than we could before to try to lower the risk that Fukushima provoked here. So my question is, what exactly is your line of action? What is your organization exactly doing? And what do you aim at, frankly speaking? Because we don't know who to trust very much in Japan about this Fukushima issue.
Yes.
Thank you. I think you're funded by a Christian organization?
No. We are funded by ourselves. We are funded by our members. In Germany, we have membership between 6,000 to 7,000 doctors and medical students, but mostly doctors, and our members pay fees every month, and this is the way how we are funded. And then second way we are funded, sometimes we do political work and people want to give us money for our helping the anti-nuclear movement in Germany. You know that there is a strong anti-nuclear movement in Germany, and we are part of this anti-nuclear movement, and we are trying to give them scientific support. As for our medical work, we believe in the medical studies, and when we look at the Chernobyl studies, we try to the best we can do. We are not everybody can fail, but we try the best we can do to evaluate it from a medical point of view. Bandazewski, as I know, he did research on pediatric patients and on the heart and heart disease, and in pediatric patients. And his approach to do this thing is very good, I think, because cesium goes into the muscle. It means it goes into the heart muscle and it goes into the other muscles too. And he saw these children that had heart sicknesses, and he wanted to find something. I talked to Sebastian Plugbeil about Bandazewski. And Sebastian Plugbeil told me that Bandazewski did some. I didn't read the Bandazewski's whole study because it's in Russian, and I cannot speak Russian, understand Russian. I only read a small, a small part overview. Sebastian Plugbeil said that his scientific methods were not so good They could have been bettered, but he was on a good way, and then he was put into prison, and he couldn't go on. So I cannot say more about that. And the other studies that when we made the Chernobyl update, this is the part I was doing for our study, is that we try to use, when we find studies, we try to find, are there other studies in a different environment which show similar effects. And when you have a medical study and you only have one medical study, this is often not enough. You have to understand what are discrepancies between different studies, and so we try to do it the best we can. But we also, in our overview, we use studies that were not in these peer-reviewed journals. It is difficult to get into peer-reviewed journals. And some of studies that are good and could be evaluated or could be made better are not in these peer-reviewed studies. For instance, Yevgenia Stepanova, who did studies on the blood cells, she did them very early. And then by chance, she met with after the 95 or so, she met with epidemiologists from the United States, and they must have had a good critical methodological discussion, and then they said to do a common work and add some good epidemiological methods, and together with Svensson, and then they found the same together with Svensson and Yevgenia Stepanova, what Stepanova has found before. Because in the Soviet Union, the epidemiological methods were not the same as in the West. They always, after Chernobyl, they had this method before Chernobyl and after Chernobyl. We look before and after, and this is enough. Of course, it's not enough. But if doctors in this region find the same clinical phenomena again and again in their patients, you have to take that serious, and then you should do better studies on the same phenomenon and try to find out if you get to the same result as in the beginning with your not so good methods or not. So this is a way we try to understand. And if we make mistakes, we are open for discussion.
Please.
Martin Kölling again. You mentioned the medical studies, but they are focusing on diseases of the body, basically. What about psychological fallout, basically? Are there studies on that too? Because living in an environment where you, even a low-dose environment where you can't be sure, I guess, has also some consequences on the psychological issues. Are there studies there?
There are studies, different studies, but I have not, to be open, I have not looked into these different studies on that. I'm myself a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and when I here in the Fukushima province, when I traveled around, I also talked with self-help groups. Mothers with their children, and yesterday evening I talked to a couple with their children who evacuated themselves on Fukushima. This is only an impression, I say, as a psychotherapist. Of course, living in an environment with low-dose radiation and with a government, to be clear, that does not give good information to the people. This makes the uncertainness on the issue hasten up. It gets higher and higher, and this this uncertainty is very problematic, of course, to live in such a situation, to live with radiation. We don't have a situation after Fukushima, but we have a situation with living with Fukushima, and the people that make their decisions if they want to evacuate themselves or not. They have to decide what is more important for them. And the people that decide to stay in Fukushima, in the province, as I understood, have only very different and very understandable personal reasons. If you have to give up your work and you get very poor, then of course you want to stay where you have where you can make a living, and where you can have a work and can earn money. Or if you have a grandfather or a grandmother that has to be looked after, you will not want maybe to get away from your very dear ones, and you feel the responsibility to look after them. And then it often might be more comfortable for your soul to stay there and to be able to help your parents and to cook meals for them or whatsoever. And I also understood that a lot of Fukushima couples were divorced because the woman wanted to go with the children and the man wanted to stay and has to earn money. And these are very uncomfortable and stressful, very stressful situations to live with. And if we would do a study on that, of course we would find some sort of stress and stress management. And if I would be a doctor here, I would go to the people and help them to better get accept their stress and to manage, do a better stress management. So I understand very much that the situation is very complicated and there are no easy answers.
Sorry, we could have somebody ask a question for the first time, please. I've opened the floor.
Sorry, Ian, how many cancer of thyroid in Fukushima?
The current figures, I don't have them in front of me. Does anybody know? It's 117.
So, Dr. Claussen, can we say that 5 years after Fukushima accident, those cancers are linked to the radiation from the accident?
When we made a study on Fukushima, we took the official WHO figures of radiation, and then you can, from this official radiation, so and so sievert was got down on so and so many people. You have a figure that's called man doses sievert, and then you add it with a factor. And if you do this work, which we did in our study, add it with a BEIR7 factor, then we got to 48,000 cancer cases. These similar studies were done in the beginning of Chernobyl, where also different scientists said so and so many man-sievert was got out and went down on so and so many people, and so many cancer deaths and cancer morbidity we will have. The difference to Chernobyl is that the real amount of the radioactive inventory is not clear still now. There are still a lot of questions on the radiation effect on Fukushima, but a little bit less maybe than on Chernobyl.
Specifically relating to pediatric thyroid cancer, which is your question, right?
No, it's
mean,
I think it's 150 now.
Is it?
I got a number yesterday, as I remember, 100. But these figures change. I don't know if they were cancer case, thyroid case, suspicions or not. So you have to look into the Fukushima Health Survey and on the last dates.
Sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Toshiyuki Sato. I was a foreign correspondent of Japanese media, and I'd like to show that the company I work for showed the documentary on Japanese two medical doctors who were in Chernobyl many years, and there were some contradicting, what you say, understandings of the findings you made. Well, still, my question is partly asked by the gentleman over there, is that although the data or scientific data that Japanese are gathering are limited, did you find any what you say, warning bells or any dangerous elements based upon judging from your experiences in Chernobyl? That is my question.
Well, I would like to ask the question back. Are 130 or 150 thyroid cancer cases in the Fukushima province, are they not enough warning bell? I think they are.
Well, there are two understandings there. One, we have to...
Can you come into the mic, please?
I did not really I get what you want to know.
Sorry, I think in Japan there's a kind of over pessimism one side, and there's over optimism. And what you said, what you observed, was a kind of warning bells to us, because we don't have enough, scientific enough attitude to check what is really going on. And the same is here about judging the numbers of child typhoid cancers. Some people say it's not much different from the background, and some people say it's very much different.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So the background worldwide on child thyroid cancer is per million 1 to 2 cases. And here we have 400,000 children between 0 and 18 years old, and we have 130 or 150 now cases. So this really is a difference, and this is a warning bell. And we can make or scientists can make a scientific discussion. What are the how much is the number of the thyroid cancers that we can relate with radiation? But there, of course, there must be a scientific discussion on that. But I want to remind you that the study that is done and that is going on from the Fukushima prefecture, from the medical hospital, university hospital there, is made in the situation that the accident had been there. It happened, and the study started after the accident. So we have we have as a background figure, we have to use general numbers we know from other studies, from worldwide studies and so on. And in the discussion now, what's discussed is, the first screening round is the prevalence. Prevalence is the amount of cancers that come in the beginning. That's the background. But now we have this background with radiation, and with children that got no tablets of there was a radioactive iodine, and the tablets weren't given to them. This is I have a lot of questions on that. I'm not the best thyroid expert, really. I'm not, but still I have my questions.
I'm afraid that we're out of time. Perhaps this can be the last question, please.
How long will the radiation threat, if that's the right word, persist for? Presumably it's peaked and over a number of years will diminish. How long will it take for the radiation levels to fall to levels where they're insignificant? And also you mentioned the impact on aquatic life in the Pacific Ocean. Your concern there is with effects through the food chain, presumably.
It depends on the radionuclide we have. Radioactive iodine has a half-life of 8 days, so it vanishes very quick. But once it's in your body, it's inhaled and it's taken up into and accumulated in the thyroid. And when it's there. It doesn't go away. And it makes a damage. So you have to understand that once the radionucleus is in your body and has done its damage there, the effect comes. Of course, in the body there are. I'm still dealing with iodine. There are reparation mechanisms. But if the amount of radioactive iodine is much, then these reparation mechanisms cannot, they are too weak. Now cesium, you asked the question how long the radioactive particles are there. Cesium has a half-life of 30 years. So it takes to completely vanish, it takes 300 years. And we have other radiation particles like strontium or like plutonium that have gone into the environment. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. And uranium has an even longer half-life. So it depends on the radionuclide we talk about. And we usually only take in account like strontium, cesium, and iodine because they are the main ones.
I would like to thank Dr. Claussen for taking the time out of her trip here in Japan to be with us here at the Press Club. I don't think there is going to be any resolution, unfortunately, and I'm afraid that we will be having press conferences like this for many years to come. And there are differing opinions, and we look forward to having our guests come here to help us figure out what all this information means. So thank you all very much for being here today, and thank you to the Foreign Press Club of Japan for hosting this press conference. Thank you.